Ah, see, Bucharest is awake. Everybody in the back, come and join us in. Come in. We're starting DevTalks number 2. For those who was here last year? Ah, awesome. I just realized it was exactly a year ago that we did DevTalks 1, number 1, all the way in the Central Hotel in Central Bucharest. Now we're doing it about twice the size it looks, probably even more. I want to welcome you all. Who here? Oh, we're getting a bit of a noise. Okay. Same one. You want me to switch to that one? Okay. Oh, I'm tied in.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm sorry for
Okay, no problem. Okay. Ooh. That's also very good. Okay. Who here is a developer? Whoa. Occasionally I go to events and I ask who's a developer, and there's like one guy in the back, and I'm like, you and me, you and me. Okay, so a couple of household things before we get started. You should all have an agenda in your bags. There's a lot of stuff on there. You can scale, you can kind of rate all the talks on a scale of 1 to 5. If you fill in all the talks you've went to and fill them in and hand them in at the end, you kind of enter a competition to win a YubiKey that's been given to us by the fabulous people at Yubico. So have a look at that. They also have more prizes on the web stage later on today, so keep an eye out for that. They're giving away more YubiKeys, an open source server, and a whole bunch of other things. There is an app for on your phone called My Connector. Have a look at that. It's very useful for keeping track of the agenda, but also for keeping in contact with people, finding people, connecting with them, asking questions, all that kind of stuff. The people from DevTalks want to really thank all the sponsors. There's a lot of them. They're up there and they're on the walls everywhere. To quickly go over them, there is on the mobile stage IBM. Then there are the gold sponsors, Deutsche Bank, Accenture, eMag, TeamNet, Siemens, Ubisoft, Brainspotting. The silver sponsors, Luxoft, Endava, Stephanie Romagna, Star Storage, Cyclum, ING, AdsWiz, and PayU. And the lanyards are provided by 1&1. Of course, there's also a lot of strategic partners involved with these kind of events. There's a lot of media partners, so we'd like to thank them as well. So from about 11:45, we're going to split this room, so there's going to be another stage on the other side. That's going to be the mobile and IoT stage. Up there is going to be the cloud data stage. Need to say that right. Yeah, the cloud stage, and then on the left is the big data stage. So have a look at your agenda. There's a lot of different topics and a lot of different kind of tracks. Pick your ones. Has anybody picked a favorite one already that they're really going to go to? Anybody pick mine from later on? Okay, so there's also a little party tonight at the Birreria H from about 8 p.m. If you bring your badge, you're actually getting a drink. So don't forget your badge. It's very important. Now, finally, there's a lot of people in the expo area, so have a look at them. They have a lot of competitions going on, so you can win some more stuff. Go and meet them. They're very friendly. They don't bite, I heard. So have a look at them. And then, without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to the first speaker of today. So I want you guys to kind of like warm up, right? To be ready to give him a big round of applause. His name is Valentin Gosu, and he's a software engineer at Mozilla, and he's going to talk about bringing the web to IoT. So give him a big round of applause, Valentin Gosu.
Thank you. Good morning. Yeah. So my name is Valentin Gosu. I'm going to start the presentation by showing you all my password. Okay, so my presentation is going to be about the web and the Internet of Things. Do we have any web developers in the room? Okay, some of you. By the end of this talk, I hope to get every one of you to start developing for the web, because it's a really cool thing to do, and you're going to see why. Me, myself, I am not a web developer. I'm a platform developer for Mozilla. And also, in my spare time, I like to hack on Firefox OS and use it to do really, really cool things. I want to start off by telling you all, well, I don't need to tell you this. The web is great. The web is something that the world has never seen before. In the past 20 years, it has brought the world closer together. It has enabled people to find the information they need. We have social media now, which has brought down governments. And various companies have built literal software empires on top of the web. But for the past 5 years or so, the web has been underused. And the reason for this is the app. So when the smartphone came about, the web wasn't truly ready to create a good and powerful application. It didn't have any access to the internals of the phone. So they brought about the app, the native app, more precisely, which allowed developers to do whatever they want on the phone. And developers liked it because, well, you build one app to do one thing and do it well, and users love it, and developers can make a huge profit out of it. And turns out that the companies who build the mobile operating systems also love it, because they also can make a profit out of it. For each app that a developer sells, they take a small share out of it. Which brings us to a problem that when you have an operating system and well, if you're using iPhone, for example, or Android, and you've bought a bunch of apps for that platform, it's a bit difficult to switch to another mobile operating system because, well, you've invested a ton of money in this one, and if you switch, then you're not going to have all the games you like, and all the apps you like, and all the really cool things that you paid money for. Now, this brings us to Mozilla, which is a non-profit dedicated to keeping the web open and empowering users and developers to use it as they like. Mozilla has built Firefox OS, which is a mobile operating system. It's been released about 2 years ago, although you won't find devices with Firefox OS everywhere, but it has gained some traction in places like India or the countries where there's not such a big smartphone penetration already. So the way Firefox OS works, you have 3 levels. You have Gonk, which is the Linux kernel, the drivers, and the hardware abstraction layer. It's about the same thing you'd find on Android. Then on top of that is Gecko, which is the rendering engine that's used in Firefox. This is the same Gecko that is used for Firefox on Android or for Firefox on desktop. And then there's Gaia, which is a collection of web apps that make up the UI. So the home screen is a web app, the dialer is a web app, even the notification bar is also a web app. Now, the real stars of Firefox OS are the web APIs. This is what was missing back then when the App Store came about, because the web had no way of accessing the phone's capabilities. You couldn't use alarms or notifications. You couldn't access the camera or the SMS or so on. So the web APIs are a set of APIs that are, part of them have been already standardized, which means you can use them in any web browser, including Chrome or IE or so on. Part of them haven't been standardized, mostly because other browser makers don't make they don't make mobile operating systems, so they didn't need access to your SMS and phone, for example. And you even have an API for payments, so you can easily pay on your phone using your carrier bill, or so you don't necessarily need a credit card if you want to buy an app, which isn't the case for most of the developed countries, but in Africa or Asia or so on, that might be the case. Not everyone has an access to a credit card. Now, I don't know how many of the web developers here use Firefox, but if you don't, I strongly encourage you to. The developers, I talk to a lot of developers, and when I tell them, hey, you have the DevTools and you could do this and you could do that, hey, they say, hey, I didn't know that. So it's a cool, it's very nice. I encourage you to use it. So for mobile app development, usually if we have Android or iOS developers in the room, you can confirm this, that it takes a bit of a while to get started because you need to download a bunch of SDKs which usually, I don't know, take up tens of gigabytes and use IDEs, and you need to find documentation and so on. Remember the old days when to build a website you only needed a text editor? Well, that's still the case. To build a web app, you still only need a text editor. But Web IDE, which is included in Firefox, gives you a bit of an edge in which it gives you a simulator that you can use to simulate the Firefox OS environment, but it also gives you a way to push your web application onto a device and test it properly. I can actually show you here. So the Web IDE is included in Firefox. If any of you have it on your laptops right now, you can give it a try. So it's this button over here. Yeah. And it opens up the Web IDE screen, and from here you can start off the Firefox OS simulator. So for those of you who haven't used it so far, this is Firefox OS. Everything you see here is a web application. So it's all built with HTML5 and JavaScript. And what's really cool about it is that you can use the developer tools or Web IDE to debug stuff directly on the device. So for example, open the email app. I start debugging the email app. Then I say alert, hello world. Yeah. So you can do stuff in real time or create an app and change things like the CSS and JavaScript and see how things work in real time, live. So for Firefox OS, you have 3 types of apps. You have normal or web apps, which is apps you yourself host on your web server, or I don't know, it doesn't matter where. You have packaged apps, which is the same app, but it's put in an archive, so it can be downloaded to the device and used offline. So on Firefox OS, it doesn't matter. If you have connectivity, it does run the web, but if you're not connected to a Wi-Fi, it doesn't matter because the app is on your device. It's just HTML, and it sits there. You also have privileged apps that are downloaded through the Firefox OS marketplace. The interesting thing is you don't have to go through the marketplace because that's part of our belief that you don't need permission to build something for the web. So if you have an app, you can just host it on your website, doesn't matter. And the other category of apps is the certified apps, which are the apps that come with the device and get access to some of their more sensible APIs. So you don't want every app you use or every website you use to have access to your contacts or your SMSs. One of the cool things you can do if you put your app on the marketplace is it's a web app. which means it runs everywhere. It runs on Android, it runs on Windows, it runs on Linux, and it runs on Mac. So, for example, we can go to the marketplace, which has a bunch of apps, and download one. For example, Wikipedia. We download it and install it, and right now it's installed. So what Firefox does for you is it packages the app. It's still a web app, but it packages it, and then you can use it as a native app. So go here, type Wikipedia. I have here Wikipedia. It starts off as an app with no UI except what it needs, and then you can use Wikipedia as a native app. Or you can uninstall it, for example, from the operating system. Cool, huh? So let's get down to the Internet of Things. Right now, the Internet of Things is more of a buzzword than an actual thing. It's the word people use for an internet-connected device that does some stuff. So if you guys want to start your own Internet of Things project, you mostly care about two things when you're getting started. You care about low cost, you want your prototyping to be as cheap as possible, and you care about speed. You care about very easy development for it. Here's where, so for example, your first thought would be, okay, I'll get the Raspberry Pi, and I'll start doing stuff with that. Then maybe I need a Wi-Fi device for connectivity, and I need flash for storage, and I need a battery if I want a wearable device. Then you need all the wires and cables, maybe a screen, maybe a camera, depends on what you want to do. And you can slowly see how the cost starts to go up to really high numbers. And what you get in the end is a bunch of wires and cables and screens all put together in a very weird way. You wouldn't, that's not a wearable device in any case. So here is where Firefox OS devices that are on the market might be helpful to you. So last year, one of the operators launched a $25 phone in India that had dual SIM, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi camera, and a bunch of other sensors you might need. That's a wearable device right there. You just need to take it apart and start working on it, and you can easily build that into your own device, your own wearable device, everything. Okay, so this brings me to Yan OS. Yan Yongboom is the one of the people who figured out that Firefox OS can be really great when you're starting a new project. He wanted to do internet-connected camera that posts your pictures to the cloud each time you take a picture. And what he did, he built Yan OS, which is a stripped-down version of Firefox OS without all the, well, if you take out all of the interface, what you're left with is a device that has JavaScript bindings to everything. So you can use JavaScript, and with a couple of lines, you can take a picture or connect to the internet or post something. And also, if you're up to it, if you're a hardware guy, you can take a screwdriver to it, rip it apart, and then you get like a little chipset with all the sensors you need, which is smaller. It's like 2/3 of a credit card, which is smaller than a Raspberry Pi, and of course, much cheaper. So I have here a device to which I flashed Yan OS. Yan OS is basically Firefox OS, as I told you, but without all the UI stuff. So I'll connect it to my laptop, see if the demo gods are with us. Yeah, so I connect to it. Okay. So right now I'm connected to the phone. I have a developer console into it, and it comes with a couple of demos to show you what you can do with a device. For example, there's device motion.start. Okay, so this basically what it does, it accesses the the orientation sensor, and you can see here how that changes when I change the orientation of the phone. So you can probably think of a bunch of things you could do for it. So you could use it as a security camera, as a motion tracker, as a GPS tracker. And one of the cool things is if you turn off the screen or if you disconnect it, then the battery will hold you much longer, even up to 2 weeks if you only use, like, I don't know, the GPS every 10 minutes or so, and then you put it to sleep. So, for you web developers in the room, this is how easy it is. Let's say you want to build, I don't know, a message answering machine, or one of those things that, I don't know, calls customers to deliver a message to them. Well, all the things, you have the APIs right there. It's called mouse telephony. You just hit dial, then you set a function, which, when the phone is connected, it just plays a message to the customer. And that's all you need to make a call and play a message to him. You can also take a picture. So if you use the back camera, it depends on the phone. If it has a back camera and a front camera, you get a blob, you can save it. You can use WebRTC to use it as a webcam, for example. You can use geolocation. You can think about I don't know, a web track, GPS tracker or something like that. Or you can use it as an alarm clock, or depends what Internet of Things device you want to build. And if you decide upon using Firefox OS as a platform, there's a couple of extra goodies that you have. So you can build on top of Firefox OS to do things it wasn't meant to, such as execute native binaries on the phone. So on regular Firefox OS phones, you can't do that because it's all the web. It's HTML5 and JavaScript, which is really good. We don't want, I don't know, C++ code going to other people because that's not portable, where JavaScript is very portable. You can build various APIs to make Firefox OS do as you please. And a bunch of people have started using Firefox OS as a platform for their various projects. There was half a year ago or a year ago, there was Matchstick, which is an HDMI dongle that you plug into your TV and make it a smart TV, which runs Firefox OS. Panasonic recently launched a series of a TV line, 4K TV, that also runs Firefox OS. There was also an interesting, more like weird than interesting thing. It's the Monum Runcible, which is like, you know those old pocket watches that you have? It's like that. It's like a smart pocket watch that you have, and it's round, and it also runs Firefox OS. So you see, a bunch of people use Firefox OS to do various things. It even runs on the Raspberry Pi, or you can flash it on your old phones if you have, I don't know, there are a bunch of phones that are supported, like old Samsung phones or Nexus devices or so on. So I thought I'd have some more time for the presentation, which I do, which brings me to a question I get often about the web, which is performance, because most people don't equate the web with performant applications. And there's a small fix for that. It's called asm.js. It's a subset of JavaScript that can be compiled to a really, really performant platform code. So when the browser opens it, it notices, oh, this is asm.js, and it can use it to run things like games. So I'm going to show you, it's called Dead Trigger 2, and let's see how well this works. Well, okay, the demo gods aren't with us. We'll try again. So you're able to run real 3D engines inside of your browser using only JavaScript. So what this means, this code is extremely portable. You can use it wherever you want. It's quite performant. So we have here real 3D graphics. You can even do virtual reality if you want to. And the cool thing about Asm.js is that it's backwards compatible. So for all the browsers that don't know what Asm.js is, this is just JavaScript. So they interpret it as JavaScript and run it, although a bit slower. But yeah, you get the picture. Okay. So I'm going to end the talk with this. I hope you got a glimpse of what the web can do. And the conclusion here is I don't want you to build things for Firefox OS. I want you to build for the web. Because I believe in a future where you don't have to build an app for a platform. You just build an app for the web, because every platform out there knows how to run the web. Every platform has a browser. So the web is ready. Question is, are you ready for the web? Thank you. We taking questions? Or?
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Ah.
Questions?
Yeah, any questions? Come on, there's a few. I'll walk around. Here we go.
Okay, so what about security issues? You haven't talked about security issues at all. Can you tell us something about it?
So security issues. So Firefox OS is basically a browser. It's quite secure in that, well, you have no problem in using your web browser to the internet banking, right? If you trust your web browser to the internet banking, you can trust it with your, I don't know, contacts or so. And Firefox OS has an interesting permission model. So as I told you, so web applications that are run from the developer's website have access to a bunch of APIs that aren't sensible. So the battery, I don't know, I can show you right here. Okay, so they have access to a bunch of APIs, and the cool thing is if they want access to your GPS, they have to ask for it. So then when they try to use it, you'll get a notification saying, would you allow this app to use your GPS or not? So yeah. So that's the security model, and I feel it's quite a good one.
A question here, what about in-app payments? Do you support them? I saw that you have something for in-app payments, and how, if you know, what % do you receive from them?
First of all, Mozilla doesn't build the devices. It just builds the operating systems, and then carriers and device manufacturers build the devices for them. Now we have the web payment API, which is an API that allows you to use the carrier billing to pay for it. So Mozilla doesn't get anything for it. It just built the API. It all depends on your, your service provider for your phone, how much they're willing to tax you for it. Usually they wouldn't take a cut from paying. It's just a payment API. So you don't use it for in-app, you don't necessarily use it for in-app billing. You can use it on any website, basically. And then the user just gets it on their phone bill or various other ways the operator has set the parameters to the API. Any other question?
No, I think that's it.
Okay,
Thank you very much. Give him a big round of applause, people. Thank you.